WCNC Charlotte. This is Flashpoint, where power and politics collide and the tough questions get asked and answered.
Thanks for joining us here on Flashpoint. I'm Ben Thompson. This week, state lawmakers making a major push for what they call school choice. Republicans pushing a bill that would pump more than $1 billion into a private school voucher program. It would offer to subsidize private education for every family in North Carolina, no matter race, neighborhood, or income. In a moment, we'll speak to a teacher who says pumping all that taxpayer money into private schools will only undermine our public school system, a system studies say is already severely underfunded. But first, joining us now, former state senator and member of the UNC Board of Governors, Joel Ford, who openly supports school choice. Welcome back to Flashpoint, Joel.
Thank you.
I should say you've been coming on this show longer than I've been guesting on this show, so you're a longtime friend of the program.
I appreciate it and I always enjoy coming on and having the open and transparent conversations.
Speaking of, let's do it. Generally speaking, let's take a broad view of school choice before we get into the specifics of what's being proposed in Raleigh. Why do you believe families should have more of a say in what schools their kids attend?
I believe that families should have a choice in their child's education, primarily because no one knows better what their kid needs than a parent. And so, speaking from experience, my family, we have transitioned from the public school and we'll be graduating this year from a charter school. And so it is a progression, but as a parent, as a family, we feel empowered when we have choice in where our kid goes to school.
I think what you just said appeals to probably a lot of parents out there and makes some sense, even though we know some people don't necessarily agree with it. Let's though dig into the details, because I think that's where some people are sort of disagreeing with where this is possibly headed. This new Choose Your School, Choose Your Future bill opens up vouchers to all income levels. Opponents point out billionaires could get it. You don't have to be in public schools either. In other words, folks who are currently paying for private school by choice will now get some sort of reimbursement or subsidy. Is that a smart, fair use of taxpayer money?
I do, primarily because it is taxpayer money, and the money doesn't automatically belongs to the local public school. And that's one of the fundamental changes that is evolving in public education. And having a choice, having a say in where your child goes to school is extremely important and empowering. Ultimately, Ben, it is about the student, right? What is going to be best for them, and how can we set them up for success in the future? And so that may look like a public school, it may look like a private school, it may look like a charter school, but the family should be able to choose.
And speaking of choose, could a family say under this bill, choose another public school? Because if not, then is this really school choice if they're only allowed to pick, say, private schools?
So no, absolutely not. There are a number of different options for families to be able to choose from. So I don't buy that argument. And so, look, if the local public school is performing and providing the educational services that families need, public school advocates don't have anything to worry about.
A lot of these schools are religious schools when we're talking about private schools. Now getting a massive inflow of taxpayer dollars. A Duke study found that our voucher program is largely unregulated. Should taxpayers worry about how that money is being used and what's being taught?
Let's be clear, the lion's share of the public resources when it comes to the federal subsidy for food, when it comes to public transportation, and the per pupil spending stays with the local school. So if a family chooses to have the money that is allocated for that child to go to a private school, I believe that that family should be empowered to do so. More importantly, let's keep in mind whose money is it, right? So it's the taxpayers' earners' money who is the one who's generating the revenue that the state is giving it back to.
So that same Duke study, though, said that the North Carolina voucher program is well designed to promote parental choice, especially for parents who prefer religious education for their kids. It is poorly designed, however, it says, to promote better academic outcomes for children and is unlikely to do so over time. Your response to that?
No, I don't buy that argument either, because let's be clear. In the marketplace, if that child who is going to that private school is not learning, is not reading on grade level, is not advancing, then again, the parent is empowered. I think that the public school advocates are concerned about the wrong thing, right? So let's talk about the main things that the public schools should be concerned about. You got 80% of Black and brown children in this state that can't read by third grade. Then that is a huge issue that they don't want to talk about.
So let's talk about that, because I mean, you talk about public schools, and the other side of this is not only, the private schools and the vouchers, but also about public school funding. I think nobody would have any problem with any of this and giving all the money in the world to private schools if necessary, if it weren't for the fact that public schools have been struggling, and we know that. And in fact, you joked in a tweet just a few days ago, virtual school with low test scores, close it. Charter school with low test scores, close it. Voucher schools with low test scores, in vouchers. Traditional public schools with low test scores, you can't expect miracles. We need more money. I know you're somewhat being funny in the tweet, but I mean, currently North Carolina ranks towards the bottom of the list of what states are spending on education. So is public school spending right now, is it really sufficient?
So this is what I'll say to you, to those parents and those who are concerned about the funding in the public school model. All we have to do, Ben, is go back and look at Project Lift, where we spent an additional $60 million that no one in Charlotte-Mecklenburg wants to talk about anymore. You know why? Because it wasn't a success. So if more money was the answer, Project Lift would have been a success. So anybody who comes on this show and starts talking about more money, we have example after example where we have spent more money. Can we invest more in public education? Absolutely. Should we? Yes. And so now is the perfect time to do so, primarily because under this current leadership, there is an estimated $6.5 billion more in this budget. So my last point is this: it's not an either or, it's a both and, because we are blessed as a state to have the resources to be able to do both. The public school advocates need to be more concerned about how they're spending the money that they have to get the best outcomes.
Where do you see this headed, like not just in the next 3, 4, 5 years or even 10 years, but say 20 years down the road, assuming this bill goes through and you have a much more robust, healthy voucher program, and you have families choosing to send their kids wherever? What does that mean for public schools 20 years down the road, and what does that mean for our overall education system?
I believe that the public school system is currently empowered. They currently receive the lion's share of the public resources, local, state, and federal. We need to have a plan that involves the local family so that we can get buy-in to get different outcomes and results for our kids. Look, I am a public school advocate and champion. I graduated from the public school system, right? But I had a single mother that was involved and invested in my educational success. Right now, the public school advocates don't want to talk about the violence in classrooms. They don't want to talk about the disruption in classrooms. They don't want to talk about the disrespect in the public classroom. For kids like mine who had to sit through that disruption while trying to learn, it's not fair to my kid. And anyone who wants to advocate for having my kid and other kids be subjected to that, shame on them.
All right, Joel Ford, always passionate, always the guy to talk to when it talks to so many issues, including education. We've had you on, as we've said before, to talk about a whole variety of issues. I know education is one that you're perhaps most passionate about. Joel, thanks for coming on. We do appreciate it as always.
Thank you very much for having me, and have a great day.
You too. More Flashpoint after this.